Right, this is Dan Meehan for Fight News Australia, and today we have Damien Beatdown Brown, who's here to talk all things Beatdown Promotions. And Damien, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Yeah, good, good. Thanks for stopping by once again. Last time we caught up, you had just announced Beatdown Promotions number one. Now it looks like you might have a few more grey hairs in that beard than you had before. So how's life been as an MMA promoter?
Oh, it's been good, man. Yeah, look, I think in my memories, it was actually last week we announced that Beatdown was going to be a thing, um, and sort of launched it. So it's been a year since we put that out there, and probably a little under a year since we spoke last. But we're going good, man. With 3 shows in, we've had some great fights. Um, there hasn't been anyone sort of that's too hard to match up, and as a result of that, we've had some pretty even matchups. A few in there that probably it doesn't matter where you go, you're gonna struggle to match them up, and that's unavoidable, and everyone knows that from promoters to coaches. So, but other than that, man, it's been a really exciting sort of journey. The first show on the surface, everyone thought it ran smoothly and it was awesome, but it was chaos in my head. And each time it's got it's a little cruisier, and the last time kind of felt like I was being complacent, but I think it was just we just sort of had things down pat. And fortunately, Mitch, who works for me, he works sort of alongside me with the promotion. He does all the design and sort of social media and stuff, and the back end, like organising and everything. And he's a godsend, man. So yeah, between the two of us, we really nailed it down in the last one. So looking forward to the next one.
Absolutely, and yeah. Speaking of the last one, of course, can you tell us a little bit about Beatdown 3? Obviously, we had. Pardon me, Stuart Nickel. Maintained his unbeaten record with a win over an international opponent. Tim Schultz pulled off a win against a tough guy, and Michael Stanoff, and obviously Paul Loga got back on the winning track. So yeah, what can you tell us about Beatdown 3?
Oh look, man, we had I think Beatdown 3 we had to sort of start from the bottom of the pro component of the card. We had some great amateur fights. Obviously, Jasmine Nakora and Chloe Henry just stood and banged it out. With Henry getting a finish in the third, that was the amateurs, and Ethan Mitchell getting a finish as well. Like that kid's tough, man. Like he is an amateur, but he's up against it for the most part because, like, he fought in his first fight was against Caleb Miller, who's my guy. They were training partners. That was on Beatdown 1. They were training partners, didn't have a fight, so let's do it. And they duked it out, man, to I think maybe a split decision, I think from memory, to Caleb. And Caleb was like 4-3 at the time, and he was making his debut against a guy with 7 fights. Um, so then the next time around, he fought Caden Riddle Johnston, and he was like 1-3. So, but he's purple belt in jiu-jitsu. Had I think some kickboxing, Thai boxing fights. So up against it again, and this time we had him. We tried to match him real even with with someone similar sort of fight experience, and they unfortunately got injured. And as a result of that, he ended up facing someone who's had 9 fights. So he went out there and got the stoppage, but he got dropped at one stage just for the flash knockdown, and he rallied back, and the final combination for anyone that watched it was insane. Like the way he whipped in that leg kick and then just followed it up with a head kick. Like the leg kick was brutal. So it was a pretty impressive fight as well. There was some, great amateur fights. Some good guys from Perth came across and sort of, executed their game plans and got the job done. And then the pro component of the card, we had some real even matchups in like featherweight professional debuts between 2 guys. We had we did have a professional debut between 2 other guys at featherweight, and then a professional debut with 2 welterweights. So Tom Ackley and Max Kelly was a great fight. It went the distance. Look, some people thought Max might have won. I tend to disagree, and I'm his coach. So, I just probably didn't quite do enough. Although he did more damage and landed more shots, he lost in control time for sure in the second and third round. So, He dropped him in the first and did a great job. Didn't get the finish, and Tom Ackley rallied back and managed to find a victory there. And of course, the top three fights were amazing, as you'd expect from international matchups. So, Paul Loga coming off a loss. I feel like Paulie, he's one of these guys that just takes fights. He's a fighter. He's old school. He doesn't pick fights. He doesn't believe in the whole, let's build myself. He just says yes to fights. And I feel like, I take personal responsibility in making sure that the fights that come across to Paul for him to say yes are the right fights. And that's not to pad records. That's just to make sure that he has a path to victory. Same as I do with any of the fights on my card. I'll look at both fighters and make sure they have a path to victory. If they don't, then the matchup doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense for a promoter. It doesn't make sense for either fighter. Like if you're the only fighter with a way to win, that doesn't make any sense to anyone. And if you're the fighter that doesn't have a way to win, like, you shouldn't be taking those fights. But real fighters will say yes. I'm not saying Paul hasn't had a way to win, but he does love to stand in the center of the cage and duke it out. And young, durable guys can sort of absorb that. So, I just felt like we had to get him evenly matched up with a guy that could be exciting, that has a great skill set, that could push him to a distance, and had a chance of winning. And Peter Benavente fought, Stuart Nickel, and I felt like Benavente, people probably look at him and go, oh, he's 1-1, he shouldn't have been fighting either of those guys. But if you don't know the inside of it, then you wouldn't understand. But he's had like 100 fights. Like, he fights. These guys in Guam are like the guys in New Zealand. If you talk to Dan Hooker, they have monthly in-house fight nights. Like, they're not recorded. They fight their teammates on a Sunday or a Saturday night every month, and they fight like proper MMA rules, and they coach referees. And these guys have had a lot of fights, and you can tell because they move well. They move like veterans. They're not, they're not scrappy like debut MMA guys or pros. They move really well. They got great footwork. They're brown belts in jiu-jitsu. They know how to mix it up. And we've seen that. Even though Paul dominated the sort of wrestling at top position, he was just a step ahead. But Benavente was never out of the fight. And, I think it was a great matchup for both guys. The guys in Guam are very easy to work with. Guam is not cheap to bring guys here, but they're very easy to work with, and sometimes it's a nice payoff. And then, in my opinion, Tim Schultz versus Michael Stanoff was arguably probably one of the best lightweight matchups in the country that could be made at this point in time. Stanoff was on a 3-fight win streak. I think. Yeah, one on Beatdown, then one on Eternal, then one on Beatdown. So 3-fight win streak coming into it. Schultz obviously off the loss to Martinez. Again, I don't think that fight should have happened. Schultz was 2-0 fighting Martinez is, in my opinion, a little reckless. Not to say he couldn't win, but he just doesn't have the runs on the board to make. Like, I think he runs that fight back. Maybe he gets a better chance now. But he still only had 3 fights. He's 4 fights. He's still only 3-1. So it's not, in my opinion, the right fight to make. But it was made, and he needed to bounce back, and he was up against it because Stanoff's a strong wrestler. So we've seen that in the first round. Stanoff had his way with him. Like, when he got it to the mat, Schultz was tough. He hung in there. He was durable. He was able to continuously transition. But at the end of the day, Schultz sort of hung in there just enough. But Stanoff still had a better wrestling game. And then obviously he got a little tired, as he does in the second round, and Schultz was able to reverse the position with the Kimura and take his back. And then from there, that's pretty much where he stayed until he got the choke. So it was a great matchup. It went back and forth. It got fight of the night. I'm pretty sure it got fight of the night. And it was one of the best lightweight matchups we probably could have had in the country. Any promotion could have put that on. It would have been awesome. And the main event, I mean, I shout his name to the rooftops. I can't tell people how good Stuart Nickel is. It was very hard to match him. And I would challenge any flyweight in this country to take that fight, because there is none that will take it. Stephen Erceg was probably the only guy that would have accepted it, but again, he was with Eternal. It didn't make a lot of sense to try and make it happen. Both guys are probably on the verge of signing with a big promotion, and Erceg has since then. But they're probably like the best flyweights in the country, and it's very difficult to find guys to fight them without going overseas or finding like a tough veteran like a Paul Loga that will say yes to a fight no matter what. So, and that fight won't happen because Paul's not going back to flyweight and he fights out of my gym. So, so yeah, it's one of those things where he's very good on the ground. He's very good wrestling, very good top pressure, counter wrestling off his back to get back to his feet. And I just wanted to find an opponent that could sort of threaten him on the ground to maybe force him to strike a little. And I think we've seen that, and he passed that test, you know what I mean? Like, he kept it on the feet for the most part. He landed some real clean right hands. He hurt Scott Ecklavia multiple times throughout that fight on the feet, and he ultimately got it done by TKO from top position on the ground. But, you know, he was threatened a couple of times with some good tight guillotines. You know, and I think that sort of forced him to strike a little bit more than he probably would have, which, you know, allowed the fans to have a better fight. Stewie got to develop from that and, you know, essentially passed the test. So yeah, it was. I thought it was a great fight. Ecklavia had never lost at flyweight, only at bantamweight. So, and he wasn't a big guy, so I'm surprised he's ever fought at bantamweight. He actually, I think he was a little bit smaller than Stuart Nichols. So I don't know how he ever fought at bantamweight, but he did, and that's where his losses came. So he was undefeated at flyweight, jiu-jitsu black belt, and yeah, it was an amazing card all around. I think. You know, what I wanted out of the fights happened. Ecklavia was able to force Nickel to strike for the most part. You know, Nickel sort of landed his hands and got to do his thing until he got it to the ground. And then, you know, Paul Loga, I just wanted him to execute a game plan and then do whatever he wanted in the third. And I thought Benavente had a chance to catch him when he did, but I don't know what. Like, I didn't tell Paul to take him down, so you know, he must have just took him down and felt that it was good, and he got to fight his fight down there. And the Stanoff and Schultz fight was very exciting for me. Like, I was cornering Schultz obviously, but you know, the fight in general, I would have Michael Stanoff back on my card every time. You know, he's technical, he's fun to watch, he can get a finish quickly. Maybe his last fight was a little uneventful after the first round when Jaden Binney basically was a backpack for a whole round. But, you know, the fight before that was entertaining. This one was entertaining. Yeah, I would have him back on every card if he wants to. So it was a great card all around. The fights were pretty evenly matched. We got a few stoppages. Creedon Sanderson, I mean, he doesn't have the best record, but that guy never disappoints. You know, one moment he's winning, then he's losing, then he's winning again, then he gets caught. And we've seen the last fight against Jack Alexander. I mean, Alexander was like having his way with him, and he just like bit down in his mouth guard and unloaded with a monstrous punch. It's classic heavyweight knockout, walk-off style punch. And, you know, heavyweights never disappoint in general, but he's definitely entertaining.
Definitely, and yeah, you sort of talked about the difficulty in finding matchups for people like Stuart Nickel, and you know, we've seen a few promotions recently bringing over international talent as well. And like you mentioned, it's an expensive exercise. So is that sort of the attraction with bringing internationals in? Is it just sort of easier to match them rather than trying to match people with local fighters?
Look, you know, modern MMA, as we like to refer to it, is very, you know, a lot of guys want, like, I get messages, what weight was this heavyweight, or I don't want to fight that guy this time, I'll fight him after one more win. Like, you get a lot of guys that sort of like, you know, they're already mapping out a path to like, how do I get to 6-0 or 8-0 so I can get to the UFC. You know, and I understand it, but as a promoter, I just like it doesn't. I mean, I'm a fighter, you know what I mean. Like I say yes to fights. I said yes to one recently, and didn't what's the word? It didn't like eventually come together, unfortunately. But yeah, you know, I said yes to a fight that was like man, it's probably going to be like a 7-1 underdog. But it's like it just is what it is, you know. Like I'm a fighter, so there's just not many people like that around anymore because the sport has become a sport, and these guys are athletes, not fighters anymore. And I'm okay with that. I think it's great, but that's hard to deal with for a promoter. So if you get a guy like Stuart Nickel, the hardest one's been Junior Tougher. You get a guy like Junior Tougher. I offered every lightweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight in this country that fight. I messaged everyone that I thought had a way to beat him, or at least a chance, which is a small chance with a guy like him. And they all said no. And I offered it to guys that I thought could take him down. They all said no. So I just had to go and find someone, you know what I mean? And that's why he fought Sakino, because the Japanese guys don't say no. They're warriors, man. That's their culture. Guys from Guam, guys from New Zealand, they don't say no. There's a couple of guys from New Zealand that weren't able to fight on that card, that couldn't take it. So they didn't necessarily say no to the fight. They just weren't available. But the ones that were available just said, no, they're not. That's not a fight for me. So, you know, those guys are kind of hard to match, and it's easier to avoid the athlete type and just go for the, you know, go to a country where someone's willing to stand in the center and throw down. And the people that win out of that is the fans. You know what I mean? The fans win when you go to somewhere like Japan or Guam or New Zealand. Not America so much, maybe Hawaii. When you go to places like that where guys are willing to sort of roll the dice on their career, you know, if they come out on top, they come out on top tested and battle ready for the UFC. So, yeah, it's just easier to deal with. You know, like flights from Japan are $1,200. Flights from Perth are like $600 or $700. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it's not a great deal more to deal with someone who's willing to say yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how do you screen the international fighters? Like, do you have sort of contacts over in, obviously Guam's a pretty obscure place. Do you have contacts at gyms over in Guam and Japan and those sorts of places? Like, how do you screen them?
Yeah. So at UFC Melbourne, I fought John Tuck, and me and John have become, you know, we like to say reasonable friends, and we talk pretty much every week. And yeah, we just we have a little bit of banter back and forth about me beating him, and he thinks he won, but Tapology says otherwise. And yeah, we go back and forth. We have a few jokes, whatever, and it's a friendly relationship. And he's my contact in Guam, you know, so I hit him up, and they're reliable. They've been out here twice now. They're pretty easy to deal with. They get their visas done. They don't mess around. They don't miss anything. And the guys in Japan, I have a couple of contacts in Japan. Obviously, Base Training Center, for anyone that doesn't know, is affiliated with Pariestra, which is directly under Yuki Nakai. So that's helpful. So we get a lot of, and I know I have a Japanese sort of link here in Australia with them over there. So we just get lists of fighters from Pariestra gyms, and that's pretty easy. And then I've also got a couple of contacts from competing and whatnot over there who I can contact for a reliable list of fighters, and they liaise for me. So they'll put me in contact with whoever it is that can help me with the English to Japanese translation and make sure we get the visas and stuff done. And so yeah, it's pretty good. We have, you know, good reliable contacts, and they send us good, you know, reliable names, and when we go from there, I don't just reach out to gyms and be like, hey, you guys got anyone that wants to fight? Because you know, you're rolling the dice there. It's like, you know, buying stock from overseas. It's kind of like, maybe you get it, maybe you won't, but as long as you got good reliable contacts, you know, then it's not too bad. And fortunately for me, I've fought almost everywhere. I mean, like I fought throughout Asia and the UK and America, and so we were pretty close to getting some guys out here from Iowa in the US. Didn't eventuate. We had a massive fight for Stuart Nickel against a Bellator veteran who had like 40 fights or something like that. So yeah, it just didn't happen. Didn't work out. And Yeah, but otherwise we got pretty reliable contacts, and we just get lists of names and we try and match them up. You know, like the reason why I do international is one, they're easy to work with. Two, they cost me the same pretty much as Australians, except for maybe like 1,000 or $2,000 extra in like an extra 1 or 2 nights accommodation if the flights don't line up, and the flights are a little bit more expensive, but not that much. And They don't say no to fights. You know what I mean? They don't say no to fights. Like guys in Australia say no to fights. I could go and find a guy like Stuart's 6-0 now. You know, like if any flyweight in this country wants to fight him on June 24, I will match him up. Any flyweight in this country, anyone that can make, 56.7 kilos and wants to fight on June 24, I will pay them well to fight Stuart Nickel.
There you go. Slide into Damien Brown's DMs if you want to fight Stuart Nickel. But obviously at Beatdown 3, you lost Annie Thatcher versus Jamie Edenden sort of after the weigh-in there. Obviously that was caused a bit of a stir on social media. But can you tell us what happened there and sort of how much of a stress that is sort of leading into an event?
Yeah, that sent me more grey than 3 fight shows, mate. Well, basically, about 12 and a half weeks out, we made that fight. I won't go right into detail, but like Thatcher's team wanted it at 63. Edenen's at normally at featherweight or lightweight. She agreed to 64. They wanted 63 and a half. So we did 63 and a half with an allowance, basically. So she came in so it was meant to be max 64. 12 and a half weeks notice. Edenen came in at 64.1. 100 grams. It's a sport full of athletes, man. You got to make the right decision for the journey. And Annie didn't feel like taking the fight after she missed was the right thing to do. I don't know why. I can't go into depth on the reasons or the way she justified that. She just felt like it wasn't worth it. So I don't know whether she clearly wasn't motivated by money because Edenen offered her entire purse to make the fight happen. So Thatcher basically would have doubled her purse. She wasn't motivated by money. My suggestion was, if she cut her hair off, she was probably on weight. But I don't know, man. I fought heaps of people that are like, I fought Frank Camacho who missed weight by 5 pounds. Like, doesn't in the UFC, like to me, weight's weight, like whatever. But I guess Annie came up from bantamweight. Edenen came down. Probably it was a little bit more, I always say to my guys, I look at my guys when someone misses weight, I say, do you want to fight the guy? If their answer is, then I just don't take the fight. If they're like, yeah, I'm going to smash his fucking head in or something like that, I'm like, all right, let's take it. I just want to know what the mentality of my fighters is. Maybe her coaches and that sort of assessed her, her approach to it, and she was a little bit more deflated over the weight miss and probably maybe to a degree concerned that they had so much time. I don't really know. I actually can't answer why they didn't take the fight. I know on social media I've seen some of it. I don't see all of it, but there was a bit of back and forth. At the end of the day, mate, fighters fight, and athletes manage their careers. And so If she wants to get to the top, sometimes taking fights is not the right thing to do. I would have taken it myself. It was 100 grams, and we offered whatever she wanted. They wanted restrictions on weight the next day. The MMA Australasia guys reckon that's dangerous. They didn't want that, so we can't really restrict someone's weight gain overnight because that's dangerous anyway. But yeah, stuff online was like, it's the professional thing to do. Congrats on making a stance. And then other stuff was like, it's 100 grams. Who cares? I don't know. Like, I can't really make a decision for a fighter. I just sit in the middle and try and make the fight happen. What I do know is that I will happily have Jamie fight on my card again at featherweight or lightweight and not at a 63 catch weight. Yeah, she was easy to deal with. She made a mistake. She missed weight. I think people have to move on from it. As far as I stand with people missing weight, I hate it. But I give everyone a second chance. Stanoff missed weight once, hasn't missed weight the last 2 times. So I'm willing to let it slide the first time, and then as a promoter, I'll as long as they make weight the next time, I'm fine with that. But you can't. I don't know. It was really hard. Like it was very difficult to deal with that fight and whatever was going on afterwards. And it wasn't until like 9 o'clock at night they actually pulled the pin. So it was a long afternoon going back and forth with both teams. And at the end of the day, there was 100% purse offered to the other team, and the other team said no because she missed weight. And I believe they said no based on principle.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. And I guess for Beatdown overall, obviously we went pretty in depth into your plans when we caught up a year ago. So how have things played out? Is being a promoter sort of what you expected going into it?
Yeah. Look, the first card gave me everything you could possibly want, right? Or not want. We lost three fights. We lost 4 fights in 2 weeks, but 3 in the last 3 days. We had 4 weight misses across the whole card, including the main and co-main event. We had everything you could possibly think of go wrong, but we managed to pull it off with 11 fights. They were great fights. They went well, and then they led to Beatdown 2, and after Beatdown 2, with the corporate tables, like all the drinks packages kind of thing on the tables, all the VIP tables, they all sold out in 6 days. The tables for Beatdown 4 are sold out now. It's only like the second week post-event. So, overall, it's going good. It was very nerve-wracking, the first card. Obviously, the Edens Hill Hotel is not cheap. It's a high-class venue. They got a great ballroom that brings an awesome vibe. They're quite expensive to hire. Not to hire, but they've got a high minimum spend requirement for their venue, and it's but they're an amazing venue. They've got event managers on the night, so you're not running your own show. They're really easy to work with, and they make my life really easy. I really love it, man. I fucking could be promoting for a long time. In fact, we are about to start an amateur MMA series. So we will be running, I can't go too much into it because the details aren't exactly sorted out, but we will be running an amateur MMA series throughout the year, and the intention is to run them on the same day. So we run 2 cards one day, but we'll see how that works out. If not, we'll run it on a different day. So yeah, we're just working through the details at the moment, but Rising Stars MMA series will be happening in 2023.
There we go. There we go. You heard it here first. Just in case you didn't have enough work to do on fight day, you want to run 2 cards in a day there. So that's that's good to hear. That's exciting. So I guess now that you've had a bit of time in the game, right? Obviously, you spoke last time about sort of some of the key principles of your vision for Beatdown Promotions with the international talent, sort of the fighter relations, all that sort of the sort of, I guess, the healthcare for the fighters and that sort of thing. So have you had to sort of pivot on anything sort of now that you've sort of experienced a few events? Has the vision changed at all?
No, not really, man. I'm not focused on me. We don't focus on the promotion. We run it like a business, but we don't focus it on how much money we can get out of it. The focus is strictly on the fighter and fan experience. That's always been what I wanted to do. I want the fighters to have an experience that they can remember, one that they want to experience again, and I want the fans to not care about what fights are on, but want to be at Beatdown Promotions every time. We run 3 a year. It's not a massive investment, so it's a good night out, and that's why we stay at that venue and we don't go somewhere cheaper, because we don't want to have 1,000, 1,200 seat stadiums. We just want to sell out the EH every time and have people just love the night out. The atmosphere is amazing, and so we just focus purely on the fighter and the fan experience, and that's what I set out to do. Make sure the fighters have like an all-in-one location to stay, eat, train, cut weight, have good weigh-in process to allow them to sort of weigh in, hydrate, do a video weigh-in, and then we don't do rules meetings and stuff, so people can periodically arrive at the venue overnight, and they're only coming from the hotel across the road, so it's walking distance. Everything that I set out to do, we're still doing, and everything is working out perfect, and I love it.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So I guess you just announced the Rising Stars MMA series, which is exciting. But what does the next 12 months look like for Beatdown Promotions?
Man, we got June 24 and October 7 is loosely locked in. And then we haven't locked in next year, but, I hope to run at least one amateur MMA event this year. And if it works out the way we expect it to work out, then we will be looking to do an amateur MMA event every time we run a professional card. So we'll have 2 to 3 hours of 10 to 12 amateur fights, and then we'll run a pro card at night, and double the coverage for our sponsors and double the experience for our fighters. So we're excited to take it show by show, but we don't mess around. I'm like pretty OCD with everything I do. I like to have shows planned out. I don't want to like take the dates that everyone has available. I want to take my dates that I want while everything's available. So probably by the time the next show's done, I'll have 3 dates for next year planned out, and we'll go from there. But bigger, better fights, and we will always have an international on our card, or someone that has to fly from overseas to be on our card within our power. That's our plan. That's our point of difference, and that's what we are. We're bridging the gap between Australian MMA and international MMA.
Awesome. What's the highlight been of your experience as a promoter so far?
There's a lot of people that believe that there's only sort of one path to the UFC in Australia without going into it, and the reason why they believe that is great marketing and business planning. And I have to say that I've had a lot of great moments, and I would hate to pick one, but it's nice to see Junior Tafa sign with the UFC and to have competed on our card, Ryzen and Brave FC over in Bali. Was it Bali? Somewhere over there. And Hex, he fought, and I've said this to numerous people, your path to the UFC is your manager. You got to make sure you have the right vehicle, and what platform you promote yourself and you entertain on is irrelevant. And So it's obviously, for me, we didn't set out to necessarily get people to the UFC, but we love the fact that someone came through our show and signed with the UFC, and I would expect that we'll probably see that again real soon. So yeah, that's obviously a highlight. But Elliot Compton went and fought for one championship after fighting for us. Um, I think Stuart Nickel will go on to big things. I don't see him losing, so that's another one probably to watch out for. And it's just been an all round highlight. Really, I thought about it for 3 or 4 years, so it's just been amazing to be able to do it, pull it off, not lose money, and be able to just keep running the next show. So yeah, it's really exciting. But I guess I wouldn't like to pick one highlight, but it's nice to see a guy come through our show and sign the UFC for sure.
And I'm sure you've got some more stories as well. Have you got any sort of weird or sort of nightmarish things that have happened along the way?
Look, man, I get I've got some pretty good athletes I've dealt with. I sort of work out what gyms to go to, and that's not a dig at anyone, but some people are very easy to deal with, and others, like athletes, they want certain things, and that's not what I'm in it for. I'm in it to make fights for the fighters to enjoy and the fans to enjoy. So yeah, it's we had one guy, his wife rang me and they pulled out because he was having weight cut problems the day before the weigh-in. And it's a weird one, man. She was like, "Oh, he's with his coach." So I rang the coach, and the coach said he was with his missus. So they obviously weren't on the same page, and the fight fell through. But that was on the Thursday, and the weigh-in was on the Friday. So my guess is he was going to miss weight, and he wasn't doing so good. So they had to pull him out. But yeah, it was that wasn't ideal, obviously. But it is funny because you want to at least make sure your story is the same. So yeah, that was a fun one. I won't say who that was, but yeah, he had to pull out. So I hope that he is healthy. I mean, I don't wish anything bad on anyone, but I found the funniest part of it that they said that he was with the other. So but other than that, it's been pretty. Oh man, it's pretty smooth. Like, I don't have any crazy stories. No one's sort of played up the venue. No one's had fights afterwards. There's all the fighters that have fought on my show are pretty respectful. I say to them, you can butt heads and you can get close to one another. Don't put hands on each other. And fortunately for me, no one has. But I like to think maybe because they're fighting for a promotion that's ran by a fighter, that there's at least some understanding and respect there, that they're going to get a good show and a good experience. And as a result of that, they're there for that, not for all the bullshit. And at the end of the day, I just don't think I'd find it hard to find any animosity in Australian MMA. Like, I don't know, maybe there's a few guys that have fought before that don't like each other, but like, when you match fights up with guys that have never met each other from different states, there's not really any animosity there. So unless you match up a guy that has to get angry to be able to fight, like, I don't really see why anyone's going to put hands on each other at all. But I know the last card, Peter Benavente and Paul Loga, they lit up the weigh-ins for sure. They got everyone pretty vocal. They got head to head, and I don't know if anyone could hear it, but they had some funny words, and it was actually quite entertaining. And both boys, again, they didn't put hands on each other. They just they made people want to watch, and that was exciting. So yeah, that was a fun one.
Awesome, and obviously for you personally, it's been a few years since we've seen you in the ring or cage, and you mentioned last time we caught up that you still had the fire in the belly, and you sort of just touched on earlier that there was a fight offer that sort of came through recently. So are we any closer to another fight? Sort of where does your own fight career sit?
Oh man, look, like, I don't think that people understand the business side of fighting. when you're 38 years old fighting in Australia again, or even when I was 35 and the UFC released me, fighting in Australia against Australians doesn't make a whole lot of sense, unless you have no intention on going on and doing anything with martial arts after you're done fighting and you just get a job. And then whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's just a bit of cash and another fight. But, I own 2 gyms. I run a fight show. I'm an international athlete. I'm a UFC veteran. And one thing that I'm not and I never will be is someone else's trophy. So, um, you know, for the right amount of money, I'll fight in Australia. But Australian MMA doesn't have that kind of money, especially clean money. So, um, it's it's just one of those things where it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But fighting does. I do have the fire in the belly. Uh, I do love to get amongst it. Um, I'm not young anymore. Again, I've had a few years off. I've focused on business, promoting, family. Um, I realized that COVID was going to get in the way. So I sort of just focused on what I could control. It took me a year to get my head around that. But once I did, that's what I did. And I rehabbed some injuries. I had some surgery. And ultimately, I'm looking to get back in there. And I don't want to fight for anyone but Ryzen. I got no interest in fighting for any other promotion in the world. Those guys treat me amazing, both on the microphone and in the ring. And their rule set suits my headspace. Um, I like the rush and the danger of their rule set. I'm not an athlete. I'm a fighter. I've always been a fighter, and I'll never change. And I realize that fighters are on the clock as far as how long they'll last in this game. Um, but I just feel like I got a couple opportunities there for me to get back amongst it, and whether I win or lose is irrelevant to me because I'm going to go in there to win because that's what I want to do. But I'm not going back to win, 5 fights in a row and fight for their belt or anything like that. I want to fight again. I have the fire in the belly and the desire to do it. And if I wasn't married and I didn't have a son and I didn't have businesses, I probably would not give up until I'm in my 40s. But I do realize that I've got a great life and I've worked really hard over the last 3 years to build what we have, and I've got athletes that I'm invested in myself. So I just want to get in there and have a couple of tussles and a couple of dust ups again, and make some noise and ruffle some feathers, and I don't know, maybe I'll upset a young up and comer or something like that again, and see what happens. But yeah, I've been talking to them about fighting a welterweight. Unfortunately, they don't really have a welterweight division. They got a few welterweights signed, like Hida Nakamura. He's fighting someone soon. Daichi Abe. Daichi Abe and me both have promoted the fight. We'd love that fight. He's ex-UFC. I'm ex-UFC. He's fought at lightweight. He's not a massive welterweight. I'd just like to get back in there at welterweight because I realized that at 38 years old, trying to cut to lightweight, and lose like sort of 17 kilos, which is kind of what I used to cut for most of my camps, is not, well, like an 8-week camp, get down to sort of like 7 or 8 kilos off weight and then cut water. So yeah, like that kind of, and I've sort of always done that, nothing less than 10 anyway, depending on how close my fights are. So the further my fights get apart, the more I focus on business and everything else in between, and train a little less and whatnot. But and when you have a kid, you've got to eat a fraction of everything they eat, so otherwise you'll upset them. Yeah, it's just I just want to fight at welterweight. I'm not young anymore, and I just don't want to make a massive cut the first time back. But if I have to, I will. So yeah, we're working on that right now, and I did get a fight offer. Unfortunately, it didn't turn into a fight, but it was massive. It was a huge fight, and I didn't say no. But that's the way the game works. I understand that, and hopefully they find someone else for me to fight. And I've already told them I won't say no. So we're working on sort of just picking up the training a little bit at the moment, a little bit more. So just finished 2 hours this morning. So a couple hours a day, striking, grappling, mixing it up again. Focus on the volume over the intensity and see where we can get Maybe I'll get light enough to take a lightweight fight. They've got a very deep lightweight division, and they're very focused on it. So ultimately, if I want to fight, that's where I got to get to. But hopefully we can get a welterweight fight on the way down. See what happens.
Excellent. Before I let you go, do you have any sponsors or anyone you'd like to shout out? I'll hand the reins back over to you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I probably should have got a list of them because I just should have. But I'd love to thank Next Gen Constructions, who have jumped on board and taken the lead role on sponsoring our fight show. Give those guys a shout out and a follow. Next, NXTGEN, Next Gen Constructions on Instagram. Give them a follow for us and show them some love. And of course, we've got some amazing sponsors that really help us out. Astute Annaly, the finance broker, commercial residential vehicle, anything you need, that guy can help you. Simon Milne, hit him up, tell him I sent you. He's the man. And of course, CTBS, accounting, you can never go without it. Those guys took me over when I was in the UFC, and there's a lot of athletes out there that just don't know their shit when it comes to numbers. I'm telling you, those guys sorted me out. I left an accountant to go to them because they didn't know what they were doing, and they told me that. And Tim from CTBS sorted me out, sorted my business out, sorts my friends out with their businesses now. He's a man that knows his way around the system. And Len Cole Building Systems. I mean, the list goes on. Franz Hydroponics is on board now as well. I'm sure I've missed someone because I didn't get the list, but Manco. I mean, we could keep going. What have I got on the stage? Daybro Village Meats. If you're in Brisbane, go buy meat off those guys. And I'm sure I've missed one. Q State Electrical. There you go. That's me 4 stage tables. That's me major sponsors. CTVS, Q State Electrical, Next Gen Constructions, and Astute Annaly. And of course,
nailed it.
Me.
Nailed it. All right. Well, Damien, thank you so much for taking the time once again. And we're looking forward to Beatdown Promotions 4 on June 24.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.